Last night you saw us go outside and actually take the meat off the deer, and we had some more in the refrigerator. What we did, we took the meat from that 9-point, we put it in a plastic bag with a cookie sheet under it so the blood, you can also, we have a container here we use a lot where it's a cooling rack underneath it. You can stack the meat right on top of the cooling rack. Blood comes off, it's not sitting in its own blood. You can cover this. There's some that have lids. This one doesn't have to cover with tinfoil. But we got everything ready. We'll go back to process our meat. And we have our meat here, clean cutting board, some real sharp knives. Over here we have butcher paper the way we do it, a scale, and some tape, and a pen to write down. We want to write down every time how the date that we put it in there. And also I like to put what size the deer was, so you can kind of know how tender it may be. You know, the younger ones will be a lot more tender. And then we have our grinder ready for doing some hamburger with the scraps. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. First thing, if you remember, I said cutting out. The first thing I cut out yesterday was this football-shaped roast, and it's one of the hardest ones to do. To cook. So we're gonna get rid of some of this fat. With deer, you don't want any fat. It's unlike the beef where you say, hey, I want to get a lot of fat on me. You go to the store, so I get it be the most tender. The fat, it's a lot where the gamey taste is and where it gets real tough. So this piece of meat, as you can see, we're talking about. I'll cut it open just slightly. You can see how it's just like rings of meat. It's not a real good solid piece of meat. It's like an outside layer with a little ring in the middle right there. So this meat, it's best cooked. We'll freeze it whole, but it's best if you cut it into slices and pound it out, because otherwise it's going to be a really tough piece of meat. But it gets all this just old fat off of there. This one can't do a whole lot with, but get some of this thicker white off. Sharp knives on the really key here. But, you know, that's about all you can do with this. I mean, and we'll package it up. I want to show you how we package this. We rinsed this off last night, so this is a good and clean piece of meat. The secret is not to have any air in here. So just fold this up and fold this down, get it real tight. Like this, and then it's like wrapping a present. Fold this over like you're doing an airplane, paper airplane. Bend it over. Put some tape on here. Do the other side the same way. Fold this up. A little more tape. Now you have a nice little piece here. I'm going to wrap it twice. Make sure the shiny side is toward the meat. Fold this up. Do the same thing. Fold. Twist it up. And there you have it. And then you want to label it. I always call this the hind quarter roast, even though it's not really a roast. That's what I've always called it. So I recognize it. You can call it anything you want. And today is the 21st of 12. All right. We'll put that one ready to go in the freezer. All right, the next thing, we're gonna get this back strap. This Hampton shot this deer last week, and actually the back strap where he hit was closer toward the spine. We had to cut the back strap in half because half of it was just no good. It had bone fragments, and being a dentist, I don't really like, at least any of my family getting broken teeth. It's no fun to do that. So we're going to trim off. See this excess here? Some of this meat toward the here on this back strap, even the scraps, we're going to save that. That's going to be for hamburger. Make sure there's no hairs. There's a hair right there. Don't want any hair in there. Won't pass health inspection. And then we're going to get off all this white. See that white? That stuff probably ain't going to do a thing, but being a little, why take a chance? And this part on the outside, this was toward the body here, the outside of the hide. This little silver piece here, it's almost like a filleting a fish. I like to just barely get my knife up underneath here and take this silver out. That's no good for anything. Hold it back here. You're going to waste a little bit of meat possibly doing this. Not a whole lot, but it's definitely going to end up being a lot better tasting. Take the arm out of here. And this is pretty easy. That's all there is to the back strap. Take that out. That's all scraps. So you got a little bit of white right here. Take that off. So that's a good piece of meat right here. This will be ready to stuff. I'm gonna cut this little piece off right here. It gets too thin at the end. That's gonna be hamburger. But that's gonna be a good piece for stuffing. Or this is real good too. This is a good piece of meat. If you're gonna do making Parmesan or anything where you're gonna fry it, you cut it in slices right here. Pound it out. Or you can cut it in slices and make any type of meat you want. That's a good piece. We're gonna wait, give this other half of this. You know, taking it to a processor would be just as good. You know, there's some really good processors out there. But when you start adding up, I know we shoot 10, 12 deer a year. That adds up. And you add the time. You usually can debone a deer like I did last night. Usually at the most, even being slow, an hour. Usually a lot less than that. Usually I think I can do it about 20 minutes. And then cutting a deer up to put in, we'll put that other half right in here. Wrapping it up like we're doing, this is going to take probably another 30 minutes. So you're looking at maybe an hour, hour and a half, and saving, you know, a lot of cost. This thing's upside down. We want to have the shiny side up here. But that saves a lot of money in the long run, and then you don't even have to get your hands on it. Nasty from gutting a deer. Last night I had to a little bit because I made a terrible shot. In a minute, I'm going to get Howlett to come over here and start wrapping everything up. We can go get this thing, especially if you have help. I know we can knock a deer out in about 15 or 20 minutes doing this stuff. So. Put back strap, put the date. That's my little hamburger pile starting. Once we get to hind quarter, it gets it. This is going to be this is that whole hind quarter we took off. Remember last night? This is from a smaller deer, but it's pretty much the whole hind quarter right here. This is the rear end, goes toward the front. Took it off and the bone fit right here. That's what we took off from the bone. So what we're going to do, we're going to open this up. You can see there's two major muscles here. We're going to open this up like this. Slide, you can start seeing where that fascia is, that white stuff that holds it together. You just take it off. See, there's going to be a whole good piece of meat we're going to clean up right here. All this was that going down that part of the leg. I said we're going to have to clean that up. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we'll clean that up, and a lot of that's just going to have to be hamburger. But there's no sense wasting any meat. Go ahead and get this going. You're just separating the muscles out. That's going to be hamburger. I'm going to save that over to full within a second. Here's a little bit more hamburger meat we're going to save and go with in a second. And there's one little muscle when you open it up. See that muscle right here? We're going to separate it out. And usually in a deer, we have some smaller, we can usually grind that up, or either it's good for the bourguignon cubes there. Okay. Now, just like the other side, we're going to get all this fat off. Anything else, throw that away. All this silver, looks like lining in here, white. Take it out. So it'll be tough. The goal is to have nice red meat. That's all you see. Keep that knife sharp, it helps a lot. That's on one, get hamburger for that. Turn it over this side. This side, see how this is all the fat from the, we can get it off. to connect toward it. On the other side. Depending on the size of deer, you'll have a lot less or a lot more fat. This one, a little bit healthier than some of the others, not much fat. It was from up in Verbena, so run up and down those hills. All right, this one's about done. Got all this white off of here. And I like to freeze these pieces in the back. This is just a big piece of meat right here. Freeze it whole, because then you're able to do anything you want to with this meat. And again, you can slice it and pound it out. You can cube it up and make roast, whatever you want. It's just a big piece of meat. It's very versatile once you thaw it out. You're not limited to one thing with this. Wrap this up. Roll that over. Taper up. We're going to get back on this other section of the other side of that hind quarter. Again, just taking this fat off. This one's going to have a big muscle that wraps around the outside. I usually take this whole thing off, and again, I'm going to use it for hamburger because it's so thin. It's just not worth it fooling with for a second. Really, what you're doing, your whole goal is to separate these muscles out. You can see how they, once you start getting in there, you say, hey, this thing comes apart. Start learning anatomy real well on the deer. Just making up the names of what the muscles are. If you don't know it, it's all right. See, this is a good piece of meat right here. It's a big piece, probably 2.5 pounds or more. And you put that in the freezer, and there's a lot what you can do with this meat. These are those hanging tenders. Remember what we got by the ribs? There's going to be just a little bit of, most of this is so fine here, you don't even have to do a whole lot of anything to this. Make sure there's nothing, make sure it's good and clean. We've already washed it off, it looks good. These are really good. If you don't like them, you can always freeze them and send them to me. I'll see if I take care of them. Here's the other one right here. Even though they're little pieces of meat, this is the filet mignon of the deer. I freeze them separately, and so we can look in our freezer, and a lot of times we'll have maybe 10 packs of hanging tenders. We can get all the packs out individually instead of having them in with something else. Now we're going to go ahead and do the hamburger. Really all it is these are the scraps, front shoulder, and the other scraps from the hind quarter that we're going to do. There's no real easy way to describe how to do it. Pretty much what you're doing is getting each scrap of meat, this part of the front shoulder, and you just cut off the white. Wherever the white is, you take it off, leave good meat. And that's the whole, that's all there is to it. We're going to get a bigger piece of meat like this, I'm going to go ahead and just take it off. It's not a real big piece of meat, but that's a bite anyway. We'll just keep having at it, getting all the meat off, or what separate it from the fat. Now you see a lot of these are in big chunks. To put it through this grinder, found it's easy. You make it long, skinny pieces like this, and it works a lot easier. It doesn't clog up the grinder as bad. So we're going to make them all long and skinny. They say to cut it up in chunks, but it seems to grind up a little bit worse that way. At least the way I do it. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Another good reason to get rid of all that white too, it'll clog up a grinder quick. And this is the time if you're making sausage or casings and stuff, this is the time to get all your seasonings out to put in there. We're going to put it in 1.5 pound packets, so we can put about a 1/2 pound of regular ground beef in there, cheap ground beef if we need to later on. Okay, we're gonna turn this on and watch it go. All right, we just finished grinding this hamburger meat. We have it on the largest setting. We don't. If you put it on the very fine, it's going to get clogged up. I like bigger chunks of meat anyway. That's what the best to me. And we're going to just weigh it out. Like I said, about 1.5 pounds of deer meat. But a lot of times we do put ground beef in there, add a little fat. Sometimes we just have a straight deer. And we put a little saran wrap over the top of this so it you don't have to clean the scale as much there. That's 1.5 pounds right there. We'll put this over and put this on that. That's one ready to wrap up, and we'll finish wrapping up the rest, and that's all there is to it.